How you guys doing? My name's Krishna. Thank you all for being here and talking through masculinity, what it means to be a man, etc. Obviously, we couldn't fit every man in the country into this room. We tried to get a diverse perspective, but of course, that caveat, we're not everyone. I wanted to start by telling you why this is something that I'm interested in. I have an 8-year-old son, and I'm seeing him absorb what manliness might mean. I'm thinking to myself, like, what does it mean to be a man? To start, maybe we could just introduce each other to each other. And if you were to describe what it means to be a man or to be masculine.
My name is Tahoe. I'm a black man from the hood. When I was young, being a man, you had to be tough. You had to be hard. And now, to me, being a man is a lot different. Now, to me, being a man is knowing when to be soft. Knowing that you don't always have to run the charge. You can actually listen. You know what I mean? So things have changed a lot over the course of the years for me.
I'm Griffin, and I don't identify as a man. I'm non-binary. I still have elements of, my identity that are masculine, elements that are feminine, elements that don't fall within that range. And I personally just don't feel tied to the norms or the confines of gender at all.
Well, welcome.
My name is Dylan, and I think that the notion of masculinity is just something that can be possessed by man or woman. Man, woman, non-gender conforming person. What it means to be masculine is just changing and very fluid. But I think that, masculinity is something that just, you embody based off of just how you show up in this world as a man and just how you go about being your day to day.
How you show up.
Right. This discussion is off to a good start. I already love where this is going. I can't wait. I already see what I love most right now is the fact that it was very diverse. So the opinions are so different. I'm already enjoying this conversation.
Interesting.
Yes.
What's up, guys? My name is Paul. I'm a fitness entrepreneur. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 4 years old with my family. It's kind of funny how we're talking about it. My take on masculinity is not about talking as much as doing. I think at its core, a man has to be efficient, competent, and be willing to do what it takes for themselves and their loved ones.
I was not always a good man. I was not always what you would call a healthy masculine man. And so as my life has changed, I've identified 5 points that I think make a truly masculine man masculine.
Okay.
I think point number 1 is a man who walks with God. Point number 2 is a man who stands on principle. Point number 3, which is a masculine man, is self-sacrificing. So someone who is willing to sacrifice for point 4, the people that he leads. A true man is a leader. And number 5, a masculine man is never a coward.
That's a lot there.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot.
And let's get into that
It's
as
a
we go
lot
on.
to unpack right
I think
there.
what it means to be a man is responsibility. As a man, it can come with a lot of power, and with great power comes great responsibility. In short words. That's it.
That's from Spider-Man, I think.
Yeah.
Uncle Ben.
James.
Well, my name is James Killen, former United States Marine turned Air Force officer. Got a couple combat tours, but I'm also a father of 3 girls who mellowed me out. The idea of masculinity is something that I find interesting because it is changing, and I can actually see those changes in myself. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this panel.
Thanks for your service. Andre.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, men. I think my idea of a real man is, someone that gets the job done, and provides and all that. I don't even know what that means anymore, but yeah, I don't know. It's changing every day.
How do you think it's changing?
No, it just seems like everything is changing every day. It's like a new world order, so I don't, I have a hard time keeping up with stuff, so I feel like tomorrow it's going to be something else, and people are going to comment and be like, you're wrong, it's this now.
It is hard to talk about some of this stuff because you feel like you might say the wrong thing.
I'm not really masculine myself, so I feel like I'm like the wrong person to ask.
Maybe you're the right person to ask. Christian.
What it means.
I think this dude is this kind of men that live off the internet and they're just guided by what the internet really says, and he sort of gives off an energy of someone who never had someone to like guide him through the early stages of his life, and you could sense that a little bit. So he's not, I feel like he's deep inside seeking for the perfect guidance to actually know what manhood is all about, masculinity is all about. And I've been there sometime in my life too. I think I get that energy. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I just get that energy.
Be a man is to be a adult human male.
That's sort of a very formal definition, but I think that might be a good place to kick off, because there's a lot of talk, of writing, of research these days that says there's a crisis in masculinity. Is there a crisis in masculinity? And if so, like, what is that crisis?
The thing that I see is a lot of deconstructing generational trauma. The be a man, boys don't cry, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why we see it as a crisis, because we're actually trying to redefine what it means to be a man, and none of us have any idea because we're just out here trying to be whoever we are.
Exactly.
That's right.
Bro.
I think that historically, being a man was rooted in patriarchy and misogyny. And now we realize how harmful that has been over the years. And so we don't really know how to define where we're supposed to be. And I think the reason that they're saying there's a crisis is because the box has gotten so small for just being, say, straight, just being a hetero, right? Because if you do anything, women judge you.
What do you mean anything?
If I dance a certain way, or if I wear my hair a certain way, if I dress a certain way, they go, real men don't do that. Real men don't do that. And so you get scared to move a certain way because you don't want to get judged or outed out of the accepted part of your community.
Exactly.
And I think that kind of has us in an uproar, and we don't know where to be. Like, where's the safe place to be for men now? You know what I mean? And it's kind of disturbing.
You know,
we're in that space where I think what he's trying to refer to is we're in that space where the men that raised us in this patriarchal system, this way that is so, it's so difficult to be that person today, right? And we don't have heroes in this time to teach us or to lay examples on how to be men of this time. If I feel like to some extent the men of this generation are going to be the ones who are supposed to lead the next generation on how to be a man in the modern world today. Because if we're to take what it was before and bring it over to what it is now, it's so difficult being that, because every time you turn your head, there's someone telling you that's not what a real man is. And it's so difficult to actually identify what a real man is anymore. And I really love this debate. Let's just keep going on this.
I was what you would call a toxic masculine male growing up. And I had good men that sewed into me. You know, they gave me good advice. But I never found manhood or never understood my place as a man until one day I humbled myself and I gave my life to the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm telling you right now, walking with God changed my life forever.
Can you define toxic masculinity? Like,
I would say toxic masculinity is like
really
what he was
wanna
just
know.
saying, where you're using that leadership role or that aggressive nature in a harmful way to harm other people, to get your way. So the biblical structure for manhood is very humble. It's self-sacrifice. It's not self-motivated, but it is motivated by principle and standing on what's right. So
That is perfect. Perfect. I think it's perfect.
there's a clear-cut vision for manhood in the Bible that I live by, and I think our culture used to live by, and I think our culture has lost its way.
I think everybody sort of has a different definition of toxic masculinity. I don't find masculinity toxic in and of itself, but I do believe in bad men, and bad men exist. But does that mean every man is toxically masculine? No.
We were talking about a crisis on masculinity. I think that there's a lack of understanding there. So it's like masculinity, being masculine isn't toxic. It's just like there are portions of it that you can dive into that make it toxic.
Because I think a lot of what we think of masculinity is tied into patriarchy, right? Which is to say, like, for the longest period of human history, like, men dominated women and got the lion's share of stuff.
I think a lot of times some people make masculinity into a caricature, like it has to be this alpha bro tough guy.
Exactly.
And I find the low-key guy who, you know, is a really great father and a great husband and maybe not like drinking raw eggs every day to be a lot more masculine than the alpha bro who's going and like banging 20 women per weekend and not a responsible man. I find it more masculine to be a good guy.
I think the background of this is
I have this issue with these alpha bro guys. Like, it's more, for me, it's more like it works when men are with men, but the moment you want to be that around women, you've lost the whole idea of being a masculine man, even in the society. Even being alpha bro with men, sometimes it lacks the emotional content, and when a man lacks the emotional content, you just lack the decency of being a human being. It's just the way I see it sometimes, because the way this whole alpha bro thing is propagated on social media and in our society in general, I'm not truly with it. Personally, I'm not truly with it.
that we are saying that gender is this like real thing that has real ideas and implications. And Griffin, I'm wondering, as someone who identifies as non-binary, how does this conversation strike you?
Well, I think that it kind of becomes like irrelevant whether or not we attribute like having like a good ethical compass to being like masculine. Attributing that to like the gender constructs which we have made up, which are like somewhat pointless, like kind of just feed into needless roles that uphold the patriarchy without even knowing it. A lot of those things are just things that people should be doing because they're like morally right. Like if you're in a family, you should probably support your family. And I really don't think that it has to do with like your manhood.
These characteristics that we're talking about are baked into an old system of domestic life.
I think that's actually where we get toxic masculinity. Like, none of us can really describe what it is, but we can see it when it happens.
So we learn it, right?
Yeah.
This is something we learn from the world. It's something we learn from like TV and shit, and it's maybe something we learn from our dads too.
Exactly.
Tell me about your dad.
I'm a first-generation kid. My dad is from Guyana. Grew up in very humble beginnings, poor family. First time I remember my dad telling me he loved me was when I was 17. And he was like saying like he was proud of me because I was about to graduate high school and things like that, you know. I'm appreciative of all the other things, you know, being present as a provider. But in terms of like, you know, the conversation piece and like, oh, I want to talk to my dad about, you know, sex or something. Or I want to talk to my dad about, oh, this person broke up with me and I'm feeling pretty sad about it. I didn't have those conversations.
So like emotional language as part of like how you talk to your dad.
Yeah.
And my definition of manhood came solely from my relationship with God. It didn't come from my father. It didn't come from the good influences around me.
Is God a man?
Yeah, and God is a man. And God is a father, and he's a good father. He's a perfect father. And so I think there is a clear definition of manhood where I guess that's where I diverge from everyone else in the room. I believe manhood is clearly defined by God. It is the perfect example of what a man should be.
Christian, I see you nodding your head.
I grew up in a divorced home.
I
When
like that
you
that
do
guy
grow up
is
in a broken home and you don't have
unapologetically
a father
Christian.
in the home, you recognize how important sort of both males and females are in raising a child and being in the home.
There's a balance between, you know, masculine energy and feminine energy.
Absolutely.
And I feel like there's both within everybody. And so there's a balance that with masculine energy in itself that I think a lot of people have trouble trying to like reconcile within themselves. Like, yes, being a man, you work hard, you take care of your people, but you got to be able to have that emotional side too, which is where the feminine energy comes in.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Y'all just like triggered something in my head when y'all.
Not really feminine energy, but emotional. Maybe because we always attach being emotional with femininity, but men can be emotional. In fact, I think we have deeper emotions than women, just not able to express it. Yeah, because we were told not to, or we were told to express it in a different way that is not a way a woman would express hers. So it's not basically a balance between masculine and feminine. It's a balance between being masculine and having an emotional touch to your life. It gives you that sense of decency. And I also, as a Christian, I also feel like being Christian is also very helpful in this, because there's a lot in the Bible that really teaches and preaches what being a man should be like. And when you actually start reading the Bible, you understand that, dude, what many of our fathers were doing was not really what the Bible was saying. But let's continue with the conversation.
I was speaking about having both in the home. To me, I didn't really have it there. And it made me feel a way, but I think that I always wanted one. And so I wound up at a certain age going outside and trying to find what masculinity was outside. And so I went on the corner, and there were 20 of us on the corner, and none of us had dads. We were all messed up, and so we all taught each other the wrong way to love, to be loved. And then I think in society there's way more people like that.
And a lot of kids who don't have fathers in the home, look for that father in the world or in a different way.
Well, first I think that like attributing like proper family values to like a heterosexual couple with children is like just not effective. Like I think that it's obviously like a heteronormative take to be like man and woman and then a child, and that's how you create like a good family, whether it's like a single mother, single father, or like a queer couple. Like I don't think that it's necessary to like attribute men and women to like certain roles in the household. I think that it's only due to nurture those gender norms that we follow.
Male and female matters. God gives you one of those identities, you take on that role. And now you're responsible for not or for fulfilling that role. There's a masculine crisis because men are not taking responsibilities for the God-given roles that they have in society. And so when you take away the need to say, God made you this or God made you this, now you don't have to take responsibility for not fulfilling what you were called to do.
When you do that, you also take away other things that somebody else may do. If I have a woman or a partner that wants to take on certain roles and I say, hey, those are my roles that God gave me in society, now I'm suppressing that person. Like at the end of the day, we're all human beings. You define who you are and how you behave under God. That's what God gave us, free will.
But also like, I think that the religious beliefs should not be used to like dictate how other people identify or how other people live their lives.
Humans need predictability, and when we put each other in these boxes, it gives us the opportunity to make decisions quickly. And I think that's what we're fighting is as a civilization at the moment, is the desire to put 7.5 billion people in specific boxes so that we can have some sort of predictability or stability in our lives. I was an emotionally abusive young man in my 20s because I had an idea of what my wife should do, and it caused a lot of stress.
Why were you the way you were?
You know, I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of pent-up rage. I had, you know, some combat stress that I had to deal with also that I wasn't dealing with because men don't show emotion.
There is a social construct that benefits men. And so the responsibility that I've learned as I've gotten older is learning how to not enforce my power, learning over women, over people.
You're saying that that role gives men more privilege, like an advantage and privilege. I'm saying that it is more self-sacrificing. I do not have free time. I do not have hobbies. I do not wake up during the day and do what I want to do, ever. I'm thinking about my wife, my kids, my business.
But that's your decision, and that's not like a mandatory thing of your masculinity.
Well, if you believe that God is true,
I don't,
and you believe that He is God, then you do have that responsibility.
What privileges are you referring to? Like, what privileges do men have?
We've constructed this entire society to benefit us.
Break it down. Like, what privileges exactly?
Like, we talk about the wage gap, or if you look at Roe versus Wade, men controlling women's bodies.
Even if there might be those privileges, there's also more men who commit suicide, more men incarcerated.
I think when you talk about like incarceration rates and things like that, like things that men are a victim of, I think that it's important to like recognize, like, I don't think that men are oppressed solely on the grounds that they're men. I think that men like experience oppression based on like the intersections of their identities, which is, you know, why we see like different like lower class jobs being worked by men, or like higher suicide rates, or like incarceration rates going up, because like men, like black men, brown men, indigenous men, queer men, trans men, etc., those people like face oppression, they experience oppression, but it's not solely due to their identity as a man.
But I think dating and sex is probably a very interesting place to think about this, because it's changing field as far as like what people expect of each other.
I date
in New York City a lot. And dating-wise, there's a lot that's, like, asked of a man. Like, first dates are, like, nightmares.
I got a question now, yeah.
Dude, it's
This
like,
guy-
I'm like, what do you want? They got, like, a checkbox, like, are you gonna pick me up? Are you gonna walk on the outside of the sidewalk? Are you gonna open the door? Are you gonna pull out the seat? Are you gonna pay for the meal? Are you gonna be interesting during the dinner? Are you gonna be funny during the dinner? And then when you walk home, are you gonna drop me off? Are you gonna watch me walk inside? And then are you gonna text me after? And it's like trying to defuse a bomb. Like, if you think you're like
Oh my
red
God.
wire, blue wire, and you're like one little thing and you're just done. And it's like, I'm to the point where I'm like, I'm so tired of like paying $150 for a first date, and then you just ghost me. And the next week I'm like hurting for cash. I'm like, I could have really used that $150. Like, why did I have to? You know what I'm saying?
I'm sorry, guys. This guy is so funny. Like, each time he opens his mouth, he doesn't talk a lot, but each time he opens his mouth, he just has something funny to say.
So the trade-off of like going on a date and as the man being like, oh, this sucks, I have to pay, or as the woman being like, oh, this sucks, I might get murdered, is like a pretty big, imbalance.
On a first date, should the man, or whoever identifies as the man on the date, pick up the check? Show of hands, who thinks yes?
Yeah, should is a weird.
Yeah,
should's a weird way
I
to
think
Okay,
so.
sorry, how would you put it?
I very much love gender roles. I like masculine men, and I want my masculine man to pick the check up. My friends seem to be the same. My girlfriends seem to want that as well. But I have a male friend who was naturally doing that, and with the dates he was going on with women, they were offended that he like took the check. So I think like, hey, if this woman doesn't want him to pay and she wants to show, she can pay, go off.
I think it's a matter of preference. Like, if someone picked it up for you, like, you develop a kind of rapport, respect with that person. Like, so be it. If the other person, the woman you're with doesn't want that, then maybe it's not the match for that person. So I think it's dependent on the situation.
I think that there's such a thing as financial abuse. And men seem a lot of time, because they spend, that a woman has to be under them or owes them something.
I think that's when you get toxic.
Me personally, I love to take care of my partner. I love that feeling that I give them, that they're taken care of when they're with me. And that's when it's with friends, anybody. If you're with me, I got you.
Like, I guess what I'm hearing from you, Andre, is that there's like a lot of pressure to inhabit the masculine side of the social expectation, and yet you might not get the benefit that you would have expected generations ago. And that puts you in a weird position.
Yeah, well, we live in a city where there's 8 million people, and a lot of these girls, especially if you're really attractive, guys are hitting on them all day. So they feel like celebrities. You got so many options. I don't blame you. I'd be the same way. Becomes like
always somebody better.
I think technology has a big part to do with that now. Like modern times, like online dating, Instagram.
Especially as a girl, you're gonna have 30 DMs a day.
Yeah, the DMs.
You know what I'm saying? Swiping up on your picture.
I think that's a big reason why it can be tougher for some men.
And a question that should be asked also is, sorry I'm pausing this video at this point, but like, are men the reason why women are behaving this way? This is just a question I just want to put out there. You can just put your answer in the comment section. Like, are men the reason why women are just feeling like they can do whatever they want, date how many people, be so, I don't know, demanding during first dates and all that? It's because some people have like the notion that, yeah, there are men who pay that amount. There are men who even do more than that. Like Andrea was saying, like $150. There are men who do more than that, and it looks like these men empower these women, So I want to know, it's like, is this true? It's like, are men the reason why women, or some women are actually this way? Not all women are like that.
I think what he's saying is there's a toxicity to femininity as well. There is a toxic side to both genders. Well,
I think anybody can be narcissistic, but I think that it's like weird to randomly attribute that to like women in New York because they're being complimented all day.
There's a term, it's called absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, but that is, when we're talking about masculinity, that's what we've had. We've typically had that. We can do whatever we want, and we do it because we squeeze, we corrupt, we take. Historically, you take over things, places that you don't like, and you rape the women, and you take the gold, and you do what you want because you have that power. Now, when we see women have that power, we're like, whoa, she's literally just getting a taste of the power that men have had for centuries.
But on the flip side of this perspective of dating, of like the poor guy who goes on these dates and gets ghosted and it's a struggle to date, on the other side of that is men have more sex, men cheat more, they have more affairs. So if I'm a woman and I'm looking for a guy, I would be really selective. I would have a list of what I was looking for, and the guy would have to meet those standards and they would be high.
I think that over the last several years, the Me Too movement has given a lot of insight into what women are feeling in the workplace, what they're experiencing, how they're being abused and otherwise silenced, how institutions of power have kept them silent. And we've heard some really awful stories and some terrible shit. I want to hear from you guys what you think about what the Me Too movement did. Has it gone too far? What does it mean for you?
I think we should also give credit to this moderator or the person, interviewer or whatever. I don't know what to call him. He's handling this so well. Like, I'm really enjoying the way he's handling this. We should give credit to this guy.
It's good for women to expose men who are doing evil things in the workplace. I think it's been a good thing in exposing sexual abuse. There's also the opposite side of that coin where women are allowed privilege to do certain things that men are not. So in the workplace, I was working at a place where a woman was grabbing me inappropriately, doing things that were inappropriate. And when you bring that up to your coworkers, you know what they say? They laugh and they say, you should be excited, right? So if a man is sexually abused, the stigma totally changes.
Well, I don't think Me Too necessarily like is what prevented people from believing you and your story. And like your story is valid, like I'm not here to suppress that, but I do think that like it's worth noting women are far more likely to be victims of sexual assault.
Doesn't change the fact that men experience it too, and they need to be heard. I don't know how to say this louder. It doesn't change that fact, okay?
It's experienced a little bit of weakness that women feel most of the time.
When we're talking about constructs, you know, you guys are saying we need to deconstruct masculinity. I'm saying there are unequal biases with both genders.
When it comes to it not necessarily being as viewed as valid, it happens to be the case because of other men, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, other men are the people that downplay that, and that's where we come back to the talk of, patriarchy and things like that.
Was put in place by men and is enforced by men.
Well, and I went for a walk to get dinner last night, and I walked several blocks because I wanted to check out a few things, and it was dark. Not a single time did the idea that I would be physically or sexually assaulted cross my mind. Not a single time. Now, I can imagine that doesn't really work out for women.
It comes down to biological differences. As a man, you're more likely to be able to have more of a chance to fend off someone attacking you. As a woman, not really. So that's why, we have things like mace and tasers or having a gun.
Is it something about it's hard to admit that you're a victim?
Yeah, for sure.
And to complain about it. People look at you like, remember Terry Crews? You can get his nuts squeezed and shit.
Right. It's like, why don't you do something? Why'd you not?
Look how the world ridiculed it. Oh, you ain't do nothing. Like, oh, you a bitch. So we as men, especially super guys that grew up in a super masculine house, we don't really like to admit weakness.
Well, and it's in our language, right? Like, don't be a bitch. Like, don't be a pussy.
Right.
Like, it's very real.
We internalize that.
Yeah. That's all examples of like toxic masculinity. Like, it's never to invalidate somebody's experience, but like it must be obvious that like these are rules and roles enforced by men and created by men.
Well, in toxic masculinity and power kind of go hand in hand. I mean, we're talking about peanut butter and jelly.
You know what it is? I think sometimes we got to go to work, and like if we're caught complaining about it, we're like admitting weakness. It's like, you're not a man.
How does that feel?
It doesn't feel great, but that doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do. If you talk about a little bit of pressure that goes with it, yeah, there's a little bit of pressure. If you can withstand it, you become a successful man.
But what does that have to do with being a man? Like, surely like a woman can do all those things, so why even...
This guy is having a problem with grasping the idea that there is something called a man. and I understand it comes from his own sexual orientation and all that. I'm not against what he is or what he identifies as, whatever, but I'm just saying you can identify as whatever you want, but it doesn't change that there is something called a man and there is something called a woman. And when you are a man, whether it's a societal factor or a religious factor or whatever, or the patriarchy, whatever, it's already a construct that exists, and it's nature. You can't walk away from that. You walk around as a man and you have these on your shoulders every day. And if you choose not to see that, then I mean, it's on you and you have that choice, but it is what it is. There is something called a man, and we live to that. We experience that. People have to experience that. So when people are sharing experiences and they're telling you, and you're seeing the person's gender, and he's telling you this is my experience, then you turn around and tell the person, what does that have to do with the fact that you're a man? He's literally a man, and he's telling you his experiences. I don't know. It's so basic to me.
Attribute it to your gender.
That's a good point, but I think also, if you're talking in terms of biological differences, generally men are more logical, right? More reasoning.
Sure.
More
I
factual
disagree.
based.
There is no scientific backing for that whatsoever.
Let him talk. Let him talk, though.
I just think it's a commonly used stereotype. I mean, I'm
So
not.
really, maybe talking about, okay, you guys can say that. I think more about me. Like, I'm more of like a logical, factual based guy. Like, I have emotions, but I don't let that deter me from what I need to do. Like my reasoning.
Do you talk with people about your emotions a lot?
I mean, I have friends. I have close guy friends I can talk to.
You do?
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing came out where, like, guys these days have fewer than 3 friends. Like, it's hard for men to make friends with each other.
I think that's a big problem now in modern times. Because you hear about, the suicide rates going up. I think that's a big reason for it. Men aren't allowed to talk about it with safe people. So if you talk about masculinity crisis, that's a crisis right there.
I think that men find friends very easily in terms of like, oh, yo, you lift 240, I lift 242, let's like spot each other like basketball or whatever. But I think that we have superficial relationships in those friendships, in which like it's very like surface level, like coming back to what you're talking about. We don't talk about feelings and things like that. That comes back to how, you're brought up and how like boys are taught in certain ways, how we go about talking to each other and how we go about expressing ourselves.
How much of this is men putting ourselves in a little box? I can tell you, I wouldn't have shared my emotions with people when I was younger, but I have people in my life now who I feel completely comfortable sharing my insecurities, my vulnerabilities, how I'm feeling. That ends up being one of the reasons why men end up with limited friends. Because, I mean, how many people can you actually feel like you can be open and honest with?
But there's something holding people back.
Yeah, and I think it's us. I think we're doing it because we're putting ourselves in this masculinity box, if you will.
I think.
And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Yeah, we are doing that, but it's because we're if you want to look up to someone, there's actually no one there to look up to. Like, the people who raised us in a particular way, and they don't understand the ways of today. So most men out there, especially men today, are looking out for men who understand what it means to be a man in today's society, and that's very difficult. So it's not a lot of people. I'm really happy for this guy that he was able to go through what he went through and come out and be in the space he is now. He is in now. That's really beautiful. Like, amen to that. Like, I'm so happy for him. But it's a crisis right now that so many men don't have who could lead them out of there, right? So I can understand the gentleman on the heart who looks to God, but I sense a bit of rigidity in his philosophy, because you also have to look at what your partner needs to see how you can also accommodate her. You cannot just be very strict on what you expect from a woman and what you expect from yourself as a man. It's gonna weigh you down. It's gonna kill you at some point. You have to be very, very flexible. You have to be very accommodating. But going back to what it's so difficult right now for. I'm seriously into this. I love this conversation. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm pausing it, guys. I'm very sorry I'm pausing this, but it's a lot. This is what I'm going through too, and I know that there's so many people going through it. Okay, let's continue. I'm talking too much now.
That vulnerability for men oftentimes is viewed as surrender, and like that is that's an example of weakness in which like someone can possibly take advantage of it, or it used to be viewed as such, where it's like, all right, cool, like he cried, oh, that means he's soft, so now I can challenge him.
And this is something that I really struggle with as a black man that grew up in the hood. You couldn't be soft. You couldn't come outside. You know what I'm saying? So you had to take on this persona in order to be a quote unquote man. As I got older, I realized I still had to do that with women. I had to be a certain way for them to look at me as a man. And if I didn't perform in that manner, they also called me a bitch.
Yeah, they want a real, like...
Right? So it's like, as progressive as I may want to be, is the world accepting of that as a whole? Because even if the other men don't like it, but the women like it, I might be like, I don't care what the guys think. As long as the women like it. But there are spaces where the women will be like, look at him, he wants a finger in his butt. Sorry.
Let's talk about fingers in the butt.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's not my type of guy. He's not my type of guy. And I can't be open with sex or accepting having gay friends.
That's what you like?
But I can't, right. You can't be open about certain things because then you become questionable and you're pushed out of the safe space.
Sex is a difficult thing for men to talk about even with each other, especially if you do have some kind of kink.
Because you're not allowed to be vulnerable. You're not allowed to be weak. You're not allowed to fail. And a lot of people that, when you say the suicide rates, you give up because you have nowhere to turn.
I kind of disagree with
this black dude on a blue shirt. He's where a lot of men are right now. Like, you're trying to progress, but you don't want to be a bitch to your fellow guys, but you don't want to be too strong for the women. And then sometimes when you even soften up for the girls, for the woman in your life, they look at you like, why are you behaving like that? You're not manly enough. But you're trying to be soft because you're with her. I'm not normally like that. I can't be a tiger outside and a tiger inside. So it's quite complicated, I think.
With you on the fact about that pressure is causing. I think it's more the lack of support and guidance for a lot of guys.
Exactly.
Like, they don't know where to turn. Like a lot of guys, suicide, I think, is like when you lose hope, right? So they just don't have hope.
What about not wanting to go get it? Because there's places to be, there's people to go. You can go to church. I mean, you can go to therapy. There's places to go.
That, but I don't feel like when you say guys don't want to express weakness, I think taking that step is hard for a lot of men, because then that expresses weakness. It's hard for a lot of guys.
You know what's interesting? That what I'm hearing is that as men, you also are victimized by the sexist expectations of masculinity.
And it also makes it hard for men to love themselves.
Did you all notice something right now? The non-binary person is lost in this conversation now. He can't. I don't know if he's a he or she. I don't know how you refer to them, but this person cannot have a conversation now because these men have gone deep. These men have started expressing what real manhood is, like what real masculinity is, and what the pains of it, the burdens of it, right? Now he's lost in this conversation. He can't really talk now. This has gone deep. This is a place in the conversation between men that not a lot of men get to. We don't normally get to this point. We don't. We find it difficult to get to this point. And it's also the reason why, like what the Asian guy is saying, it's so difficult for a lot of men to take the step to go to this length in the conversation. If you watched him in the beginning of this debate, he wasn't saying so much because he knows I think he knows how deep he can go, and I think he has been thinking to himself, am I ready to go this deep? Am I ready to start actually speaking to what I really feel? And the moment he started speaking, you see this conversation really deepen.
And love themselves enough to understand that they're in trouble, you know, and I know that's something that happened in my life. It was, but before I did finally go to therapy and get the demons out that I needed to get out, it took me meeting a woman who actually made me want to love myself.
You found a woman who gave you peace and changed you a lot. Well, great if a man is dating a woman and she doesn't like that he's not masculine enough, it's kind of like, to me, I feel like too bad for him. He should go find someone else.
Exactly.
That's part of the dating scene. Everyone has things that they like and things that they don't like.
I feel like your preference is your preference, but at like some point, I think it's like noteworthy and responsible to like understand where those preferences or like originate.
Not necessarily. I think our life experiences form what we really want in our dating life. And because I grew up in a broken home and I didn't have a man in the house, I want a man who gives me security and protection.
True.
I don't think me deconstructing masculine is going to do that for me. I was missing that in my childhood, and that's what I want in a man.
Exactly.
I tend to diverge from like the Freudian daddy issues stuff when it comes to like what
Congratulations.
people like.
I'm so happy for you. I want a man who gives me security.
Thank you.
I think
Good. The way he said the congratulations. Oh my God.
if I'm with a woman and the bad dates I've had is when I'm like talking about my problems, I'm complaining about something, I'm not going to see that woman. If I'm projecting more strength and I'm more charismatic, I'm positive, I'm probably going to see that woman.
True.
So I think as much as like guys, you know, you want guys to be vulnerable, that doesn't work a lot of times. And I think it just comes down to that.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what it is. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
And it sounds like a lot of you are saying that's wrong.
I'm not saying
and
it's
it's
wrong.
like,
I'm not saying
it's like,
wrong. I think it is what it is.
I just think that society teaches you have to be a certain way.
and that's really...
And that's my issue. Because if this is who you are, your character, right, it just blossoms into this person that loves to pay for dates, loves to open doors, and loves to walk in the house, then that's fine. But when society tells you that from a young boy, that that's the only way to be as a man, this is the only way to be. And you think about things like, say, people on the down low that don't want to come out till later because they're scared of societal pressures, right? You should be able to be whoever you want without society telling you you have to be this way in order to fit in this box.
Pressure is on, like, the body. Like, pressure is to be buff, to, like, look good.
There is a certain pressure, I guess you can call it, for guys to look a certain way, especially if they're trying to attract women. So I think it comes down to just men who look a certain way tend to look more competent. They can protect.
I was just going to add on to what you were saying. If a guy looks fit, if a guy looks strong, okay, as a girl, she's probably thinking, if I'm on the street and somebody tries to do something to me, I know that he can handle it.
I also think generally, like, guys who don't have the body that they're looking for, or generally, they're not as healthy. It's not just a look thing, it's just a health thing.
Yeah, that's
you know, the body and mind are connected. If someone is strong, they're probably going to look strong, and they're probably going to feel strong. So I think when you say it's a pressure, I think it can be construed as a healthy pressure. Hey, get strong, be strong, because you're going to be a healthier and more mentally fit individual.
For example, I was a gymnast, and I think, you know, the training that I did not only trained my body, but it winded up training my mind and making me a stronger human, period.
As the skinniest person here, you're skinny?
This guy.
As the second...
This guy.
No, it's
This
like,
guy's
I
just
don't know.
funny.
It's like, yeah, you do. I've had a bunch of girls, like, friend zone me, and I'd be like, why? And they're like, you're just too skinny. And I'd be like, damn. I mean, they kept it so real, I can't.
That's,
But I'm
kind
like-
of him to say that, is saying that there is a good and natural connection between, like, feeling good, healthy habits, looking good, and that there's a masculine ideal to that of some sort. Does anyone disagree with that here?
I do. Body diversity exists across like multiple spectrums, and I think that it's unfair to like only attribute like mental fortitude and like mental strength to like physical strength. Not having like a perfectly in shape body doesn't necessarily mean you're unhealthy by any means, and I also don't think it necessarily means that you like lack mental fortitude.
I don't think I'm saying that
I agree with him, but I
to
don't think
look
that's
strong
what
is
he's
the only
saying.
way to be mentally strong.
Yes, that's not
I
what
think
he's saying.
as long as you feel like you have a competent physical body, I think that's going to benefit your mental health.
How do you
Yes,
define
that's what
competence?
he's saying.
Yeah, I think in terms of what you're trying to do. So are you a student? Like, what are your endeavors in life?
Me?
Yes.
I'm a student athlete.
Okay, what
And
kind of sport?
I'm a springboard diver.
Okay, do you train to do springboard diving?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you feel good when you train and you do well on the springboard?
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean.
That's what he's saying.
That's what I'm talking about.
When
If you
you're
feel
when
confident
you're
at the
physically
endeavors you're trying to
okay,
do,
you
I
get
think
more
that's-
mentally
But I think
competent in
there's
what you
a
want
lot
to
of
do.
like non-athletic people who may not be in like the same physical shape as like an athlete would be,
Right.
who are competent in what they're trying to do, because that like action has nothing to do with like their like.
So that's where I disagree with you. That's where I
Yeah.
disagree with you. I think some people who don't realize the potential for their physical to blend into their mental is something that needs to be talked about. I think it's undervalued.
It's not that you have to work out to have a competent mind. It's that working out does help with competence.
Like, why is it so difficult for you to understand?
Release, people feel better. There's so many times I wake up, I don't want to go to the gym. It's going to be the worst day ever. I'm in a bad mood. I go, my endorphins are released. I'm great. I'm woken up. Like, we have the science for that. So
Especially
I
not
think
like
it plays very little. We've had presidents in wheelchairs that were very confident, successful men
Yeah.
who couldn't walk. And so I'm going to say that it doesn't define you
I
as
think
a
there's
man.
always a...
But is the societal pressure to be in shape for men?
I don't-
And then when I just, I don't like when I'm having sex and my stomach like is over her butt or whatever. Like, I want to eat less, me, but
Paul can
nobody's
change
like, yo,
that.
you're fat.
We've spent all this time like deconstructing masculinity and all these things, but then it seems as though if a woman or someone dating says, hey, I want a swole guy, suddenly it's like, sorry, I don't think that's a societal pressure. That's what that woman wants, and she's entitled to have.
But I
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
you know, I have
We also have to look at the fact that this also depends on the kind of women you hang out with. It's because sometimes the kind of women you meet tends to make you believe it's a societal expectation or something. No, it's just because you've been meeting the wrong couple of ladies. So I think that like you as much as you're thinking about the societal demand of something, speaking to what the black dude is saying, like you also have to realize that, dude, it just you have to understand that sometimes your idea may come from the people that you have around you. It gives you a particular sense of ideology. I don't know.
body type.
Yeah, I agree with
preferences.
that.
Like I'm not going to say what it is, but there's certain girls where I'll go on and I'm like, you don't really have what I'm looking. I don't say that because that's the dick, but in my head, I'm just like, this isn't going to work.
so
I think
One thing
that's
to have a
fair.
preference and another thing
It's
to
a
make like a
preference.
sweeping like conclusion and then like broadcast it everywhere.
No, people
Right.
are entitled to date their preference.
Because when you look at statistics, they say that, what is it, like 70% of CEOs are over the size 6'4", for example. So there is, amongst men, a pressure to be bigger, and bigger men tend to be in charge. And that's proven, statistically proven. And so there is a pressure for men who are naturally smaller, naturally overweight, naturally not as fit, to become fit or to become bigger.
Well, and every one
I
of us
think-
here have heard little man syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
We've all
Who hasn't heard
every
that
one
saying?
of us.
He's got
Yeah,
Napoleon
we all
syndrome. He's got
most
little
people
man syndrome.
experience it.
Yeah,
There's nothing you
Like
can do
you think you're tall and then you meet a taller person, you're like you just feel so little.
about it, and that's where it becomes harmful. Specifically, like short king spring or whatever. Like a person, I mean, you can't like. I mean, there's like I guess like on Twitter I've seen like people getting a surgical procedure to break their legs and add 6 inches to their height or something like that.
It's stuff you can't.
You know what I mean? It's like but like besides that, which is like a really expensive procedure, it's also like comes into socioeconomic background and things like that as well too.
And
it's
you're
like
never
you literally can't do anything about that. I think that's where it becomes harmful. Which like all right, like if there is the pressure in which like I can't date a person or I can't like get a position or I can't do X, Y, and Z because I'm not a certain height or something I literally cannot change about myself. What now?
What is big dick energy?
Did you literally just ask that?
It's when confidence crosses the line of arrogance. That's exactly.
Oh, did you hear that? I'm gonna take it back a bit. Oh,
It's when confidence crosses the line of arrogance.
when confidence crosses the line of arrogance. There's a lot to unpack there.
That's exactly.
I don't.
People
I
have
don't
told me I.
No.
People have told me I have
agree.
BDE.
You have BDE?
Yeah, people told me I have BDE.
You did in that back room.
Not to show off.
He said, look at that.
I think BDE is like just a confident man. I don't think it's an arrogant man. I don't find arrogance to be big dick energy. I find it to be insecure. If you're arrogant, you're trying to like, I don't.
There's no
I find
political
it
stage.
so odd to equate somebody's like the size of their genitals to like the quality of their character. Like what? That's nobody's
There's a lot of
business.
It's more of just like a metaphor.
I think big dick energy has been propagated into the wrong thing. It usually was just a confident dude who has master's degree on the bed per se. But I think it's been propagated into someone who is more arrogant now, because people who have attained that confidence from women who keep telling them, oh, you're so good on the bed, they have that arrogance within them now, and that is what we see on today's social media and all that. But I think for what it is, it's just a confident man on the bed, just someone who's really confident in the bed. That's just what it is.
I don't agree though.
Yeah, for confidence.
See, but
It's not really like
but
that.
then it comes back. Now we're getting into like a deeper conversation, which like some men see a value based off the size of what they're getting between their legs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's why the conversation of big dick energy comes into place, because people feel as though like a man that's like more that's packing more down there. You know what I mean? Is more like one, they're better in bed. They're like more confident people. They're exuding a certain energy. So that like the stereotypes. So the stereotypes associated with having a big dick.
The lack of a need to overcompensate to society because you're adequate.
You know what you got.
You walk with confidence because you can tell when somebody's putting on because they lack in certain ways. And men, me, and people I know equate manhood and masculinity to their dick size and how much money they got. Like it's like, yo, you feel more confident.
And sometimes that kind of stuff bleeds
That's
into
another way
violence.
to
And you see
put
that
it.
in domestic
That's good.
violence situations, like men are like the perpetrators of that by and large. There's something wrong with masculinity when it becomes violent.
100%. I also think because of testosterone and a number of different things, men are inherently more violent.
But being able to control it, that's
Yeah,
that's
we
important. Being able to control
That's where the
Yeah.
responsibility comes in.
Yeah.
I think you hear the whole saying like it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, and I think there's a lot of wisdom behind that saying.
Wait, back up. What did you just say?
In a war, saying like it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
It's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in the war. Oh, it makes sense now. Sorry, I'm so dumb. It takes a minute.
And I think there's a lot of wisdom behind that saying.
Well, George Orwell said people sleep peaceably in their beds at night because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. I think that's a big thing, but the key is to be ready, to have the ability, and also the humility and the confidence to not use it unless it's absolutely necessary. I don't think
Jordan Peterson put it in the best way. Like, you can't say a man needs to be dangerous. You can't say you're a peaceful person if you're not dangerous. You have to be dangerous first, and then be able and capable of like holding back who you are and keeping the peace. And people know that you are capable of doing this, but you don't.
we teach boys that enough, because I think promoting violence is extremely toxic.
Is there something inherently violent about masculinity?
Inherently violent?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. If a majority of men were bad, evil, violent,
We
a
won't
lot
even
of us
have
would
the
not be
word.
sitting here
Yeah,
today.
exactly. We won't even have the
Okay,
word
we'd
we
still
have
be
today.
in the Stone Age. You know what I mean? That's why I kind of push back against that idea that inherently men are violent, inherently masculinity is bad, is violent, because I don't believe that that's true.
Why do you think that such a vast majority of mass shootings are done by men?
I think that's a mental health issue. I think that, and this is why we're talking about men in crisis. Yeah, because men are more willing to to do what they have to, to not do what they have to do, but to take action
To
in
express.
terms of that. And that's how we talk about this, men in crisis. A lot of those
Men are able, they are more quick to express their emotions in violence. They are more, yeah, that's what he's trying to say.
mass shooters are males because a lot of males, they don't know how to have an outlet or to find outlets to talk about what their issues are. That's what it comes down to.
We know that these mass shooters, most of them are white males. We know that. So when I talk to a lot of white males that have traditional values, say, or maybe a traditional upbringing, they feel like they've been made to be the villains of society. And so I feel that pressure a lot of times. I feel like, hey, like when we're having this conversation, even I hear words like patriarchy, traditional society, right? So I feel like I'm being put in a box and made to be the villain. And I hear this from a lot of white males. I feel like I'm the bad guy. I feel like I'm the villain. So maybe at some point, mentally, they're breaking and becoming that villain. They're becoming that monster that they...
Before this person talks, let me just... He's making a very, very good point. Because, like... I'm not trying to be racial here. I don't like doing that. I don't like talking about that in my podcast. But, like... As much as we keep complaining of this whole patriarchy thing, especially in a place like the US, I feel like these white men are also being called out in so many ways that they are being, attacked for a crime they didn't commit. So the white men of this present generation actually are suffering something that people should be aware of, if I'm being honest anyway.
They've been made out to be.
Be the exception. If you're worried about being put into a box that is one that is like clearly harmful based on like what people are doing, then don't do that. Mass shooters is like obviously like a sensitive topic, but a lot of them are like men with like little to no friends who like go out and in like a burst of rage commit like atrocities. And I don't think that it has to do with how they're hardwired as men. I think that it has to do with how society like treats people like that.
I agree with you.
It does. Wow, exactly. You're saying exactly what he is saying too. You're right.
On the point that men need support and they need someone to talk to and talk about these issues.
I don't think that men have been taught emotional intelligence throughout life, right? We know, so we respond with anger. All right, if I'm disappointed, if I feel resentment, or I feel contempt, or I feel embarrassment, or I feel jealous, or any of these things that fall under that one thing, we respond with one way. And if we learn how to communicate better, if we were able to say, yo, you know what? I resent that you spoke to me that way. Or, I feel jealous, of whatever. If it was okay for men to express those things, we wouldn't feel a need to just go, you know what? Fuck you.
You can take any two 3-year-olds. You take a 3-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. I have 2 girls. Their first instinct is to lie to me, to manipulate me, to say their sister said this when she didn't. I have a friend that has all boys. You know what they do? They throw a fire truck at your head. Bam. That's a natural response. That's not a learned behavior. They're taught.
That's totally a learned behavior.
No. 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. It's not necessarily learned. It's not necessarily learned. It's a natural behavior. In fact, they start behaving like that as kids naturally, and then you have to start curbing that behavior for them as kids. It's a very natural thing. It's not.
Girls Barbie dolls, like you.
I don't think you could say it's one or the other. I think there is some interplay between both.
Thank you guys for
your
but
honesty, like in the tender ages,
willingness
though.
to go to uncomfortable places, willingness to debate one another. Yeah, I'm interested to see like what sticks with me like in days to come after our conversation, because I think so many things were raised in such sort of a diverse perspective group.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Oh my God, this was a beautiful conversation. I'm sorry I was always coming in to give like quick comments within the video. I hope you guys still enjoy with all that, but I think it was a really beautiful conversation, and I felt like there was one thing I would have really loved if they could have done that, like get somebody in 60s or late 60s to also be here. It would be very good to have 1 or 2 persons like in their late 60s or just mid 60s be here in this conversation, because we got questions. We really got questions, and we just would have loved to hear like a perspective from someone way older. And well, outside that, Vice, I think you guys did a very good job. More interviews like this, it's gonna be very nice to watch. Alright, so if you have comments, please do post them under this video. I would want to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for being on this one with me. See you